Felt like making a video today, and I guess there's nothing like getting back on the horse or back on the bicycle or whatever, so I thought I'd do that. And this was inspired by a video that I watched by Vernaculus with regards to a YouTuber called Sensei and a video that she'd made about racism. A while back, Robert Wallace had made a video where he was talking about white people don't like to talk about racism, and he made several videos there actually. And I objected or disagreed with some of the things that he said. But I didn't make a video response because I felt like it wasn't constructive. I thought, I think discussions of racism are a good idea, and so I don't want to discourage that by objecting to some of the things that he said. And so I didn't bother. But not all discussions of racism are productive. And I've actually been watching quite a few videos on race relations recently. And the one by Vernaculus, sort of talking about Sensei, touched a nerve with me because this is along the lines with some of the stuff that I've been watching myself. This is a woman who basically is responding to the claim that not all white people are racist. And she's saying, yes, all white people are racist. And this is in the same spirit as a lot of the discussions by Bell Hooks, by Neely Fuller Jr., Dr. Francis Welsing, and more, you might say, modern people in academia, some of the Bahar Mustafa and the like. There's a lot of this going around now. And I think a lot of it does stem from the earlier people I mentioned, the Bell Hooks and those sorts of people. And what troubles me about this is I want to talk about two things here. I want to talk about privilege, and I want to talk about not all white people. So racism or prejudice, I think, at its core, are predicated necessarily on assuming certain characteristics about a person just based on their race, their sex, their sexual orientation, their economic or social status, their skin coloring, and certain other arbitrary metrics that don't really tell you anything about an individual. That's, to me, what racism and prejudice is sort of at its core. Because if you're not making those assumptions, then you know you're not going to be stereotyping or putting a person in a box. It might be then all that's left is the individual's merit themselves, right? And that might be, depending on how you're viewing that might be a little bit more accurate, right? And I think that's an important thing to consider when we're talking about racism, because of course the Bahar Mustafas and other people of this world will say you can't be racist to a white person, you can't be sexist to a man, etc., etc. But if those things are predicated on assuming certain characteristics about a person based on these things, then you certainly can. And that's what's operational here, I think, in saying that, yes, all white people are racist. On her video that Vernaculus was responding to, she says all white people are racist. And she says, when you say all white people, they rush to claim that this is unfair because they are individuals. But this sense of individualism is in and of itself a privilege. Individualism is a facet of privilege. Now, leaving the privilege aside for just a moment, they rush, so we're talking about, once again, all white people. And again, this is in lockstep with Bell Hooks talking about the nature of whiteness. Neely Fuller Jr. and Dr. Francis Welsing have very, very similar comments to that. I may make a more involved video discussing those two people in particular. And that is essentially the nature of racism, to ascribe certain characteristics to people based on skin color alone. And they don't see how this is racist. And here's the issue. I'm not asserting here that somehow the racism is equal here. I'm not asserting that white people are discriminated against in equal numbers because of these things. What I am saying is that I think this kind of discourse is damaging to race relations. These people are putting up walls here. These people are putting up fences between the races by making statements like this. And I think it's really it's obviously unfair because, again, what people should be treated as individuals. Content of their character, not the color of their skin, as a very famous person once said. And I think we should be striving for a meritocracy as much as possible. I think that's what ending racism is really about. Judge people on the content of their character. And you can't know if someone is a racist or not until you know them. And you really can't know the content of one's character deeply until you know their story, their individual story. And really, to me, ending racism is about seeking individualism. It's about seeking the right to be treated as an individual. And according to Sensei, individualism is a facet of privilege. And I wondered what is meant by that statement? What is she really trying to accomplish? I always try to look for the motives behind it. And I think privilege is a dangerous word. Privilege seems to me to indicate something that is undeserved. It's unearned and it's held over the people who don't have that same privilege. But the privileges that are often associated with white people or white men or men are actually things that everyone should enjoy. They shouldn't be privileges. They should just be, I think, the status quo. Individualism, I think, is a good example of that. We should all be able to be treated as individuals. Now, if you're asserting that because your skin color, you don't have, and she does say this in her video, that black people don't have the luxury of being treated as individuals. I mean, I think you are adopting and wearing the cloak of victim mentality at that point. Because there are a lot of people of color and other minority groups who have very well asserted their individualism. I think it is a product of what you do as much as it is a product of your environment. And there are many people who have fought for their individualism and won. And I think, you know, there's an onus on each and every one of us to assert our individualism. And I think there's a sort of a subconscious communication that goes on there. And people respect people who command respect. And so I think, you know, saying that you don't have the luxury of individualism just because of a certain minority facet of your makeup, I think is a little bit dangerous. It's self-limiting. But I realized that much in the way that this happens in other arenas, such as sex and sexual orientation, when people talk about privilege, the idea here is to actually neutralize the benefit. So again, I think calling it a privilege is dangerous, and it's ill-informed, because it's not something that is unearned or undeserved. It's something that we should all enjoy. At least in these cases, these specific privileges that are usually referred to. But also, when someone says, hey, you know what, individualism is just a facet of privilege, she's seeking to neutralize that individualism, right? In other words, I don't have to consider your individuality, your personal story. I get to say you're a fucking racist because of these arbitrary metrics, and don't come to me talking about individualism because that's just a facet of your privilege, which is just another way that I can dismiss you. I can discredit you without considering who you are as a human being, without judging the content of your character, your history, your makeup, what is produce the person that you are today. So I want to keep this video to 10 minutes, and I really just felt like making a video today. And this is a topic that I have been doing some research on and a lot of thinking. I've watched a lot of videos on race relations recently in the shop, as well as sex relations and things like that. And so I may do a little bit more on this in the future. Let me know if that's something that you're interested in. I think these are very important topics, especially with a lot of the things that have happened in the world recently. Thanks as always for watching.